Have you ever wondered what the real secret is behind the success and wealth of millionaires? What do they do differently? How do they think and act to achieve results that seem unattainable to most? In this video, we will dive deep into the millionaire mindset, reveal simple and powerful habits that can transform your life, and show you how you too can develop a mindset that puts you on the path to wealth and success. If you are tired of feeling like you are always one step behind, and want to discover how millionaires think to always be ahead, stay with me until the end, because these tips can change everything. Let's get into number 1. 1. Humble origins and challenges. Imagine a small town in the countryside, where the sun is warm and the dirt roads seem to have no end. In this town, in a very simple house, lived a child full of dreams. The house was modest, with walls already faded by time and with small patches that showed that the parents did everything they could to keep it standing. The floor of the yard was made of dirt, and the wind brought the dust inside the house. At night, when the stars shone in the sky, this child would lie down on her simple bed and imagine what the world would be like outside, beyond the borders of her small town. She didn't have expensive toys or new clothes. When she needed something, her parents always said, "We can't do it now, but one day we will." These words, repeated many times, ended up becoming part of her life. Her friends at school talked about her vacations, fashionable clothes and outings, but she knew that her reality was very different. Sometimes she would look out the window, see her neighbors who had a little more, and wonder why life was so hard for her family. But even in the face of hardship, something inside her never faded, a huge dream. She wanted to change her story and make a difference, not only for herself, but for everyone around her. She always watched her parents work hard, sacrificing themselves to put food on the table and pay the bills. They did what they could, but even then, there were times when the money simply wasn't enough. But they never gave up. Growing up amidst these hardships made her realize from an early age that the world was not an easy place. But instead of letting it discourage her, she used this reality to fuel her determination. When she saw her parents struggle, she promised herself that she would do something big. Something that could transform their lives and her own. Little by little, she began to think about how she could help. It was then that, as a child, she had an idea. It all started out very simply. She would collect fallen fruit from her yard, wash it carefully, and sell it to her neighbors. With the little money she earned, she would buy things that could help her family. On weekends, she would help her mother with small chores around the house, and in return, her mother would give her a few coins. She knew that with her small savings, she was planting the seeds of something bigger. As she got a little older, her thoughts began to go beyond that. Now she wanted to do more than just sell fruit. She thought about how she could earn money to really help her parents, so that they wouldn't have to work so hard. She started doing small jobs for her neighbors, taking care of their gardens, walking their dogs, and even washing their cars. She saw each job she did as a step towards her dream. And this is where an important part of the story comes in, the value of hard work. Even if it was small jobs, for her, every coin she earned was a victory. Every penny represented a part of her journey. She knew that while many of her friends could buy whatever they wanted without any effort, she was building something much bigger. Through her own efforts, she was learning that the value of things is not just in their price, but in how much you work to get them. Of course, in the beginning, the rewards were not great. She saved, but things seemed to change very slowly. Sometimes she felt like her efforts were not yielding the expected results. But you know what's interesting? She never gave up. Because deep down, she knew that every small victory was important. Even if it seemed like progress was slow, she was always taking a step forward. And most importantly, she was learning the most valuable lesson of all, perseverance. As she grew older, this fighting spirit stayed with her. Now, instead of selling small things or doing chores for neighbors, she began to think of bigger ways to change her life. She wanted to study, learn, discover how she could grow and go further. And with each challenge she faced, each time it seemed like things were too difficult, she remembered her promise, to transform her reality and create a better future for her family. This story teaches us a powerful lesson: it doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter how many difficulties arise along the way. What really matters is how much you are willing to fight for your dreams. Life can be full of obstacles, but it is precisely these obstacles that make us stronger and teach us to value each achievement. This child, who began her journey in a humble home, learned to use each challenge as a ladder to climb higher. She understood that with patience, effort, and perseverance, it was possible to transform her life, one step at a time. And, over time, she saw that what seemed impossible was suddenly within her reach. 2. Overcoming and determination. Now, imagine this same child, now a little older, facing even greater challenges. She was in her teens, and her dreams of changing her life were only growing. But, like many success stories, the path was full of obstacles. Money continued to be a problem, and she often heard people around her say that there was no point in dreaming so big, or that people like us don't get very far. These words sometimes weighed on her heart, but she always remembered one very important thing: the one who decides how far she can go is herself, not others. One day, coming back from school with a heavy backpack on her back and thoughts full of doubts, she asked herself, will I ever be able to get out of this situation? Will I ever have the chance to change my destiny? She looked at the city streets, the same places she had seen since she was little, and decided that no matter how difficult it was, she would not give up. With this new determination, she began to dedicate herself even more to her studies. She knew that education was one of the keys that could open the doors to a better life. At school, while many of her classmates complained about their homework or found classes boring, she saw each lesson as an opportunity. For her, learning was like building a bridge to the future she dreamed of. And even when things didn't make sense or seemed too difficult, she kept trying. She spent hours in the library, checking out books that could help her understand more about the world, successful people, and how to achieve her goals. It was at this time that she began to realize something fundamental: success doesn't come overnight. It takes work, dedication, and, above all, patience. There were times when she felt alone on this journey. Her friends were more interested in having fun and living in the present, while she seemed to always have her head in the future, thinking about how she could make her dreams come true. One day, as she was walking home, she saw a scene that deeply touched her heart. A neighbor, who also lived in simple conditions, had worked hard for many years and had finally managed to renovate his house. She looked at that house with its brand new walls and thought, if he could do it, so can I. That was a moment of revelation. Her neighbor's new house was living proof that, with continuous effort, changes can happen. It may take time, it may be tiring, but they can happen. With this renewed inspiration, she began to put into practice some principles that she had learned from books and classes. She knew that, to achieve success, it was not enough to just dream, it was necessary to take action. So, she began to better organize her time, set daily goals and look for ways to develop skills that would help her in the future. She got involved in school projects, participated in competitions and, whenever possible, sought to learn something new, whether from her teachers or from her own life experiences. But, as in every good story of overcoming, things got even harder before they got better. There was a period when her family went through an even bigger financial crisis, and she had to work part-time to help out at home. This meant less time to study, less time to dedicate to her personal goals. But instead of giving up, she found a way to balance it all. During her breaks at work, she would review her school notes. At night, after a long day, she would dedicate herself to her studies, even though she was exhausted. And in her free time, she would read books on personal development, motivation, and business, learning that true wealth begins in the mind. Every challenge that came her way seemed to test her, as if the universe were asking, "Do you really want this?" And she resolutely responded to each difficulty with hard work, discipline, and persistence. She knew that the harder she fought, the closer she would get to her goals. This phase of her life taught us something essential: the path to success is rarely easy. But those who can overcome difficulties with determination, without giving up when the odds seem to be against them, are the ones who truly make a difference. She learned that it's not just about where you are now, but where you want to be and how hard you are willing to work to get there. Over time, her dedication began to pay off. Her grades improved at school, and she began to excel in projects and competitions. Other people began to notice how hard she was working, and little by little, opportunities that had previously seemed impossible began to appear. But more than that, she realized that through her determination, she was already beginning to change her reality, and this was just the beginning. Before we continue with number 3, make sure you are subscribed in the channel. In here, you will see everything you need to have a millionaire mindset. Now, let's continue with the video. 3. Courage to decide. Let's continue the story of this determined person who, despite all the difficulties, never gave up on her dreams. A crucial moment in her journey was when she realized that it wasn't enough to just work hard or study hard. She had to make important decisions, even if those decisions were difficult and full of uncertainty. Imagine that, after years of struggling in school, she finally graduated and now had several options in front of her. What should she do now? Should she continue her studies? Should she start working? How could she help her family and, at the same time, not give up on her dreams? These questions swirled around in her head like a whirlwind, and there was no easy answer. But she knew one thing: she couldn't stay still. She had to choose a path. One night she sat down in the small room where she grew up and began to write down all her options in a notebook. On one side were the safest opportunities, jobs that could guarantee her a steady salary, but that wouldn't allow her to fully realize her dreams. On the other hand, there were riskier options, such as starting her own business or investing in an idea that many people said was crazy. But these were the ones that excited her the most, the ones that made her heart beat faster. It was a difficult choice. If she followed the safest path, she could guarantee a certain stability, but she might always feel like she hadn't explored her full potential. If she chose the risky path, she could fail, and the fear of failure was real. She didn't want to disappoint her family, who had sacrificed so much, or waste the years of effort she had put in to get there. It was then that she remembered something she had read in one of the motivational books she loved to read: courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite the fear. At that moment, she understood that fear would always be present in her life, in one way or another. But it was up to her to choose what to do with that fear. She decided that she would not let fear control her decisions. With her heart racing and her hands sweating, she made one of the hardest decisions of her life. She chose to follow the path that truly made her feel alive. She decided to invest her time, energy, and the few resources she had in an idea of her own, a project that she knew had the power to transform her life and the lives of others, even if no one else believed in it. In the beginning, she felt incredibly insecure. There were times when she wondered if she had made the right choice. What if everything went wrong? What if she failed? But at the same time, she remembered all the other times she had faced challenges and emerged victorious. After all, she had overcome so many difficulties, and each one of them had made her a stronger and more determined person. And so, with great courage, she began to build something from scratch. Many people around her did not understand her decisions and, at times, even criticized her for not choosing the easier, or safer, path. But as time went on, she began to realize that this bold choice was taking her to places she never imagined. Each small success, each achievement, was a reminder that having the courage to make decisions, even when the future is uncertain, can be what makes all the difference. This part of the story teaches us something very powerful. It is not easy to make big decisions in life, especially when the future seems uncertain and fear paralyzes us. But those who have the courage to follow the path they truly desire, even with all the risks, are the ones who truly discover their true potential. Fear should not be what stops us from moving forward, but rather a force that challenges us to be braver. Looking back, she did not regret her choice. In fact, she realized that the decisions that scared her the most were also the ones that made her grow the most. And in the end, the courage to make decisions, to follow her own instincts, was what led her to achieve everything she had ever dreamed of. 4. Perseverance and patience, the long road to success. Now, let's imagine another chapter in this determined person's life. After making her courageous choice, she began to walk a new path. A path full of challenges and obstacles, but also of small victories that kept her moving forward. And, as we all know, nothing great happens overnight. That's where perseverance and patience come in. Imagine that, in the beginning, things weren't going exactly as she expected. She had invested time and effort in her project, but the results were slow. Few people recognized her work, and it often seemed like all the sacrifice was leading nowhere. She began to wonder if she was on the right path, if all that effort was really worth it. This is a moment that many of us face in our lives. That's when she remembered a story her grandfather always told her. It was about a giant tree, known as the Chinese bamboo. The Chinese bamboo is a plant that, after being planted, takes 5 whole years before it even sprouts from the ground. During all this time, the farmer has to tend the soil, water the plant and make sure it has all the necessary conditions to grow, but there is no visible sign of growth. For anyone passing by, it would be easy to think that the seed was not working, that there would be no plant at all. But the farmer knew that, even without seeing it, something was happening underground. Then, in the 5th year, something incredible happens. The Chinese bamboo finally breaks through the soil and begins to grow. And it is not a slow growth. In just 6 weeks, it can reach a height of over 20 meters. After years of seeing nothing, the growth happens all at once. The lesson of this story is simple. Sometimes, the most important things in life take time to manifest. Just like the Chinese bamboo, we need to have patience and perseverance, even when we do not see immediate results. Inspired by this story, our protagonist understood that, even if the results of her efforts were not visible at that moment, she was indeed progressing. She just needed to stay strong, like a farmer who takes care of his plant, knowing that success would come in due time. With this mindset, she began to work every day, making small advances, without getting discouraged when things seemed not to move as fast as she would like. She understood that true success is built little by little, and that each small step, no matter how small it may seem, is taking her in the right direction. Of course, there were days when she wanted to give up. After all, who has never been through this? Who has never felt tired of fighting, of trying hard and, apparently, seeing nothing in return? But, each time this thought arose, she remembered the story of the Chinese bamboo and the importance of continuing to water her plant. Each day was a new opportunity to grow, to learn, to get a little closer to her dreams. This perseverance began to bear fruit. Over time, people began to notice her work. Small opportunities began to appear, and what once seemed impossible was now becoming a reality. Success did not come overnight, it was built, day after day, with a lot of patience and persistence. This part of the journey teaches us that the path to success is often long and full of challenges, but those who have the patience to wait and the perseverance to keep working, even when the results take time to appear, are those who, in the end, reap the greatest rewards. Just like the Chinese bamboo, success may take time to manifest itself, but when it does, the growth is extraordinary. And so, our protagonist shows us that, if you are at a point in life where it seems that your efforts are not bearing fruit, it is important to remember that success takes time. Do not give up at the first obstacle. Keep believing, keep working, and be patient. Success is on the way, even if you cannot see it yet. Let me know in the comment section down below if you are learning something new. Into number 5. 5. Learning from mistakes, how to turn failures into success. Imagine that our protagonist had already decided on the path she was going to follow. She was full of energy, motivated, and determined to achieve her dreams. But, as happens to everyone, she soon came across some obstacles she didn't expect. She made mistakes. And there were plenty of them. You may have heard someone say that, to err is human, but at that moment, it seemed like her mistakes were holding our protagonist down. She began to ask herself, am I capable of this? Should I keep trying? It was a moment of doubt, something many of us have experienced. Imagine you're preparing for something important, a test, a competition, or even a project, and suddenly things don't go as planned. You give your best, but the end result isn't what you expected. It can be discouraging, right? But instead of letting it get her down, she remembered something her mother always told her. With each mistake, she wasn't just failing. She was learning. It's like when you're learning to ride a bike. In the beginning, you fall a lot. But each fall teaches you something new. You learn to balance better, to pay more attention, to improve your technique. And little by little, you get better at it. With this new way of thinking, she began to see her mistakes in a different way. Now, each failure was a lesson. Instead of feeling defeated, she began to ask herself, what can I learn from this? What is this mistake trying to teach me? There was a time when she was participating in a big project and, in the middle of everything, things started to go wrong. She had trusted that everything was under control, but in the end, she made a mistake that compromised part of the work. It was a shock. However, instead of complaining or giving up, she used it as a learning opportunity. She analyzed what went wrong, understood where she could improve, and took notes so she wouldn't repeat the same mistake in the future. This mindset made all the difference. Each mistake, instead of being an obstacle, became a stepping stone to the next level. She began to learn faster, to adapt to situations, and, most importantly, to not be afraid to make mistakes again. Over time, she realized that the fear of failure is what delays success the most. When we stop seeing failure as the end of the road and start seeing it as an important part of the process, we open the door to opportunities we never imagined. Imagine if great inventors had given up at the first mistake? The electric light bulb, for example, was invented after many failed attempts. Each time something went wrong, the inventor learned what didn't work and adjusted the next time. It was a long process of trial and error, but in the end, the result changed the world. Our protagonist adopted this spirit of constant learning. Whenever something went wrong, instead of feeling discouraged, she asked herself, what can I do differently next time? Little by little, this mindset turned each failure into an opportunity for growth. What this story teaches us is simple but powerful: mistakes are not enemies. They are our teachers. Every time we make a mistake, we have the chance to learn something that can make us stronger and more prepared for the next challenge. If we run away from mistakes, we run away from growth. So, the next time you make a mistake, remember our protagonist. Instead of feeling bad, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? If you adopt this mindset, you will see that, over time, your mistakes will become stepping stones that will lead you to success. The important thing is not how many times you make a mistake, but how much you learn and get back up after each fall. 6. The positive mind, how to stay focused on what's important. Imagine that our protagonist, after all the ups and downs, was already beginning to better understand the path to success. She learned from her mistakes, maintained discipline, and had already made great strides. But in the midst of all this, a new challenge arose: how to deal with negative thoughts. You know when you're about to do something important, but suddenly a little voice in your head starts saying things like, you won't be able to do it, this is too difficult, or maybe it's not for you? This was our protagonist's new obstacle. Even after so much effort, she began to be surrounded by doubts and fears. One time, she was preparing for a big event. She had trained for weeks, knew she was ready, but the day before, insecurities began to arise. It was as if all her efforts were going to be in vain. She felt butterflies in her stomach, as if something was wrong, even though she knew she had done everything she could. And that's where the power of a positive mind comes in. Instead of letting negative thoughts dominate her, she decided she would face it in a different way. She stopped for a moment and began to remember all the achievements she had made up until that point. Every small step she had taken, every victory, every lesson learned. She realized that if she had reached that point, it was because she had already overcome many challenges. Our protagonist then began to train her mind, not just her body or her skills, but her mind. She decided that whenever a negative thought arose, she would replace it with something positive. It was a daily effort. Sometimes these thoughts would come back with force, but little by little, she became stronger. Every time a "you can't do it" came up, she would respond with "I've done it before and I'll do it again." Imagine that the mind is like a garden. If you let the weeds grow, they will take over everything. But if you take care of this garden, watering it with positive thoughts, it will flourish. She decided to plant good seeds in her mental garden. Instead of focusing on problems, she started focusing on solutions. When a challenge appeared, instead of thinking, "this is impossible," she started thinking, "how can I solve this?" And so, our protagonist developed one of the most powerful skills a person can have, the ability to stay focused on what is important, regardless of the circumstances. She understood that negative thoughts do not disappear, but they can be controlled. She began to practice daily, repeating to herself that she was capable, that she was on the right path, and that, with focus and dedication, she could overcome any obstacle. One day, while talking to a friend, she shared this secret. The friend was also going through difficulties and felt unmotivated. She told him how she had learned to control her thoughts and focus on the positive. And the best part? It worked. The friend also started applying this technique, and soon he realized how it made a difference in his life. Our protagonist realized that success was not just about being physically or technically capable, but mainly about how she dealt with mental challenges. Keeping a positive mind was what helped her keep going, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. This didn't mean that she no longer had negative thoughts. But now she knew how to face them. So, if you've ever felt like this, full of doubts and negative thoughts, remember this story. Your mind is your greatest ally. The more you feed positive thoughts, the stronger you become. And when challenges come, instead of letting yourself get down, you'll be prepared to face them with confidence and focus. Remember, what you think influences what you do. And what you do determines where you'll end up. So, take good care of your mental garden. Plant thoughts that drive you, strengthen you, and keep you focused on what really matters. We have reached the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Now that you know the secrets behind the millionaire mindset and how these simple habits can put you on the path to wealth and success, the question remains, what are you going to do with this information? Remember, the difference between those who reach the top and those who stay at the same place is in the action. Millionaires don't just think differently, they act differently. Every small step in the right direction brings you closer to success. So why not start applying these concepts to your life today? Success is not something reserved for just a privileged few. It is within reach of anyone who adopts the right mindset and persists. If you truly want to change your trajectory and achieve a life of prosperity, it all starts with what you do now. So keep developing, keep seeking to grow, and remember, the millionaire mindset is the key to opening doors that once seemed closed.